Hey there, welcome to SharkCast Pod, a podcast dedicated to the greatest sporting club in the history of the world, the mighty Cronulla Sharks. My name is Sam Shinazzi, OG 2015, supporting the team for a lot longer. And this is SharkCast Pod, brought to you by Dyson Logistics, the Royal Motor Yacht Club in Port Hacking, and Jason Hawes of Crips and Crips Real Estate. This is our 11th season of podcasting, having a ball. Thanks to everyone who listens, contributes, the whole thing. You know how I feel. I appreciate you all. And we're going to hear from a lot of you today, which is going to be fun. On the other end of the line, for our podcast listeners, for those watching, you can already see the very handsome and talented, more importantly, Kieran Fraser. He is a lifer as well. Sometimes it feels like he's gotten life, but this is just little bad periods we go through, like a 2-game losing streak, rising out to beat Manly this weekend. Kieran, how are you, my man?
I'm glad we're doing this now, a few days removed from Thursday's game. I was a little bit emotional the next day. I was a little bit flat. I was a little bit upset. But, we're now at Wednesday. I can't believe how fast that week has gone. And I'm ready to go again. And, fingers crossed for a much better result.
Absolutely. And it has been a long week. I mean, Thursday, we're almost a week removed from it. So it's been a long one. A lot of people's mail we're going to get through. We're just going to catch up. You and I, we haven't spoken much about the Sharks through different circumstances. So we'll talk a little bit about where we're at, what's going on, and then we'll roll into a big mailbag, which will pretty much cover the show and our thoughts and feelings as well, if you kind of follow my drift. So that's what's going on in SharkCast land. We've got a few more episodes to come. We've recorded one with Gary. Not sure if that's out or not, depending on when you're watching this. So lots of content, as they say in the business, for you to consume, with the big game coming up in Perth on Saturday, 3 p.m. Eastern Sydney time. I think it's 1 o'clock over there, Kieran. Is that right?
Yeah, 2-hour time difference.
So the weather is going to be not too bad. I've had a look. It's warm. And that day, it's going to be mid to high 20s. So it's not too bad at that time. Anyway, Kieran, 2 losses. Canterbury, Canberra, pretty different games, same results. How are you feeling at this point in time?
I think the frustrating thing for me was it's the losses are one thing, but it's the performances are another. I think it was 2 very disappointing performances back to back, and we don't typically see 2 weeks of back to back efforts like that. 2 weeks where we had similar issues where we would get into good attacking positions and not be able to capitalize on it. So again, frustrating from that aspect. And I think if we had somehow held on for that last tackle of that game against Canberra, we might have glossed over a few things, but we shouldn't have been as close as what we were. I felt we got every 50-50 call. I felt like we were lucky to be in that game. I don't think we played well at all. So I think if we had won that game, it might not have been a true reflection of where we actually sit. So hopefully this is the kick up the backside that the boys need to kind of reevaluate where we're actually sitting and what we're actually doing when we get out on that field, because, it was a bit of a lackluster performance.
Even the 2 halves, first half, second half of the Canberra game, were very different in themselves. I thought the first half we were way off. And the second half, they got it together. They defended well. They hung on well. But the attack was still pretty clunky. Did you see the difference in the 2 halves?
Yeah, I mean, the second half kind of reminded me, and I don't mean this in a weird way, but like I remember when John Lang left the Sharks, and he sort of said, if I could have my time over, the one thing I would change is a lot of the times we just held on to try and win the game. We didn't try and actually win the game once we got in front. We just tried not to lose the game. And It felt like once they got out to that 2 points, they just kind of shut up shop and thought, we'll just back our defense here to win this game, because our attack fired no shots. And it's one of those frustrating things. Hudson Young has built a career out of absolutely killing the Sharks. And, to see him do it twice, and even when he came back on the field, it's like, oh no, here we go. And when he makes that break at the end for that try, to see the center on that side of the field go out all the way on the other side of the field and score the match-winning try, I just felt like they seemed really flat. So the first half, I was expecting a bounce back from the loss against the Dogs. I thought I saw a little bit from some players. I thought Ronaldo's hit-ups were good. I thought Fanua Blake made good meters. But then the second half just looked so flat. And I don't know if that's a tired thing. I know we've spoken about this in the past. There's a lot of travel and we're off to Perth this week. But, geez, it just looked like they didn't want to be there.
Yeah, I'm kind of getting away from that travel excuse now, Kieran. And it's an excuse that only fans, media people are bringing up. It's not the club themselves. But I've been thinking long and hard about it. And I don't really think it's a thing in that, yeah, there's sickness attached to the travel. So I get that aspect of it. But as far as the actual travel goes, I just don't think it's a thing. It can't be. Like, they're professional athletes. Canberra traveled to Townsville, played in like 35-degree weather, the same turnaround. So they look pretty fresh. So I don't think it's a reason or excuse. It is a fact. We are traveling around a lot. That's for sure. So,
and look, it does die down. But right now, I don't know if it's a timing thing, if they're not getting enough time during the week together or whatever the case is. They've had a really long break after this game. I don't know what day they flew over to Perth, but hopefully we see, a hungry team that's got a lot of effort, because that was a really flat performance. And, if we lose a game, I can normally comprehend it and process it. But where I struggle as a fan is when I look at the team and they just didn't seem to be in it. And that was one of those performances on the last week that it just seemed really flat. So, yeah, fingers crossed we can address it quickly.
Yeah. Now, we won't get too much into player performances because there's a bunch in the mail about, good, bad, indifferent. Let me ask you this. At round 5 going into 6, who's impressing you out of the Sharks main group?
Fanua Blake. I think if you took Fanua Blake out of that performance that we had on Thursday night last week, I think you would have struggled to name a forward outside of Nakora who really stepped up and did his job. I think Fanua Blake, for us, he's starting to become that leader, and I think he's getting more comfortable being a Shark, and I think he's starting to fit more into it. But then I look at the other forwards and go, how are they reacting to how he's playing? Because it doesn't seem like that's gelling right now. But I think from, who's impressed me the most, I'd say Fanua Blake. I think Will, got off to a really great start for the year. Had a couple of quiet weeks. And, I've seen a lot of talk about him again in the online communities the last couple of weeks. So, he's kind of on that teetering spot. But I think it's probably not who's impressed me as much as probably been some of the regressions that I've kind of seen over the last 2 weeks that have kind of concerned me the most. But we can dive into that later.
Okay, no problemo. And are you at this point in time worried, or you just think that teams go through losses and they come back at some point? Like, are you overly worried? What's going on with your mental health in the Sharks?
I'm not hitting the panic button just yet. I still think we've got a good roster. I still think we've got good depth. I just think we need to work out a few key things. I think our utilization of the bench is not where it needs to be. I think we've got to work out how we want to play all those different middles. I'm not sold on having 3 different lock forwards play in a 80-minute game. It was only 2 the other week because Talakai wasn't there. It was just Atkinson and McKinnon. I'm not sold on Atkinson being that utility guy. We've seen him in the centers versus the Bulldogs. I think I've seen enough of him defended center and wing over the past 18 months to say that, I don't see the difference of putting a Teague there or a Talakai in the centers over DA. It's more so that half situation, which then again you can put McInnes in at 9 and move Brayley out. So look, I'm not hitting the panic button just yet. I'm going to need to see a fair bit of improvement over the next couple of weeks. But I think for us, the real grading mark will be once we get through Magic Round. And I think that's about 3 weeks away. I think so. And I think if we can then see after 8 weeks, 2 months of the competition, where we're currently sitting, what's our for and against, what's our win-loss record, I think that's going to give us a real good judge. Because again, we do have a bit of a downward hill run in the second half of the season where we don't leave New South Wales for a really long period of time. So I'm not panicking just yet, but at the same time, we can't fall too far behind the pack because we saw what happened last year with some of those teams that went over to Vegas, like the Roosters and Broncos. Once you kind of get in that funk early in the season, it's really hard to dig yourself back out of. And again, with the roster that we've constructed, it's not as if we're going to have a big changeover for next season, right? We've got to make it work with the roster and the cattle that we've got now. So we've got to turn it around quickly.
We do. Very wise words. Let's tell everyone about the RMYC, and then we'll do a little bit of news and jump into the mail, because we've got quite a bit of mail to get through, Kieran. But our friends at the Royal Motor Yacht Club in Port Hacking, awesome place to go. You and I have been there many times. Great food at the Galley restaurant, and you can eat anywhere in the building, obviously, and outside as well in some parts. It's a great place to go to watch the footy. There's a sports bar. There's a bar downstairs for the weekends. There's TVs everywhere, and just really friendly folks. Everyone's welcome. If you're a member, you get discounts. I believe, Kieran, you don't need to live in the 5 kilometer radius anymore. You can just sort of pop on in, so that's no issue at all. So book online, rmycph.com.au. There is an app, I believe. There is a phone number, 9523-9300, and tell Liam and the crew that we sent you there. The RMYC. It's a great place to be. Kieran, there is some good news, some success at the lower levels. The Flag Sharks won last week against Canberra, 32-18. They're playing in New Zealand this week, early on Saturday, 8:15 kickoff our time. Unfortunately, the Shark Jets lost their first game. They got hammered by Canberra, 42-14. They also play in New Zealand at about 11 o'clock our time on Saturday. But the best news is that the SG Ball team, the Lisa Fiola team, and the Tasha Gale team are all in the finals being played this weekend, Saturday and Sunday at Leichhardt. It's great news. So if you're in the area, if you can get there, go support it. You can go on to sharks.com.au to get all the game day info, but that is very positive news. One thing I did want to hit you up about, Kieran, very topical as of late last week, and they probably don't want us to talk about it, but I'm happy to talk about it. And that was a interview with Chairman Steve Mace in the Telegraph late last week, and it was based around Nicho Hynes and Steve defending Nicho Hynes against the harsher types of criticism. He said that Nicho is a victim of the tall poppy syndrome. The criticism was narrow-minded and borderline un-Australian. These players are people. If Nicho was your family member, how would you feel? I don't understand people who think it's acceptable behavior. If you call yourself a Sharks fan, support your players, team, and club. Why are we bringing the game down? Let's remove the negativity from the game. He then goes on with some very interesting things to say. We don't want a superstar. We want someone to do their job. If the coach is happy, then get off his back. End of the day, Nicho's an amazing human being. He'll do anything for anyone. He'd give you the shirt off his back. So I think it's awesome that Mace has gone into bat for one of our players. It happens to be Nicho Hynes. You'd rather him do that than sit in the corner and say no comment. I think there is a fine line between saying that you can't criticize the way someone plays, whether you can do that or not. I think that's a fine line. I think that maybe the story got a little bit away from him and the journalist. I think he's just specifically talking about the harsher spotlight on him, the more personal things. He's not playing well because of this and this and this. I think he's sort of focusing on that, and the headline has kind of gotten a bit bigger than what he wanted. But what are your thoughts on Steve Mace doing this?
I mean, there's two parts of it, right? Like, the Sharks fan in me really loves it, but then also to the kind of, I mean, I don't want to say business professional in me dislikes it. And I mean, I guess that's kind of more my corporate hat that I'm putting on here, purely because defending someone in your organization is never going to really work to the masses outside of your organization, right? Like, if there was some controversy where Fins Up got in a lot of trouble because Dan is an absolute creep, and then everybody wanted to attack Dan, if Terry goes out there and says, no matter what, Dan's my guy, we support Dan, people are going to go blow back and say, well, you're only supporting him because he's your mate and he's in your group, right?
Sure.
If you get that external validation from outside, that means a little bit more. But when you're kind of sticking up for somebody that is in your organization and in your team, it's a lose-lose battle. no matter what your point is, and I think he has a valid point in the sense that I always go back to last season. Nicho was in State of Origin, had that incident that happened, then had that injury, came back. We beat Manly at Brookvale, scored 42 points, I think 7 tries. Nicho kicked 6 goals, doesn't miss a tackle. And then NRL 360 on the Tuesday is like, Nicho was quiet. Now, I think the spotlight on Nicho is insane because we can still win games and put up 40 points, and then people will still say, well, he was quiet. And I just, I don't know what he would need to do to get people off his back. And I think maybe if Steve said a comment more on those lines, well, what do we need to see from him when the coach is happy? Because 2 weeks ago, everybody was saying this Trindle and Hines combination is absolutely, unreal, and Fitz is onto something here.
Yeah,
we lose one game, and then it becomes, oh, that's Nicho's fault, and Nicho's on so much money. They should swap the 7 and the 6. And newsflash, everybody, like that number is irrelevant. Tricky has been our 7 for a really long time now, and Nicho is that other number 6 guy. And you can have a big money 6 and a smaller money 7. The Broncos won a comp with Shane Perry at 7 and Lockyer at 6. It didn't mean that Lockyer was not the dominant playmaker or that Shane Perry should have been on more money. It doesn't matter. Like, we won a comp with Townsend at 7 and Maloney at 6. Like, Maloney was on more money than Townsend. Maloney had more of a dominant voice, but Townsend steered the ship around. So, like, all these things are kind of irrelevant in a sense. But when you go out so publicly and defend someone within your organization like that, you're just opening up for one, more criticism, and 2, you're opening up for people saying that you're, dismissing the issues, right? That they're perceived issues. And from our standpoint, I look at it and go, could our halves be better? Absolutely. But I look at that performance, especially against Canberra, and I go, where was our forwards? Like, I'm sure we're going to jump into the stats later, but outside of Fanil Blake and, Ronaldo and Hiroti, like, a lot of the meters were not coming from the players that were spending a lot of money. If you look at the money and the sum total of what we're paying the other front rowers outside of Fanil Blake, where was our go forward on the weekend? And if we don't have the go forward, where is it going from?
The only thing I'd say about that, and we will get into that in the letters, but the only thing I'd say to that, Kieran, is that we did have a bit of time in the opposition 20, no matter how we got there, and the halves did look clunky. So I think that the criticism on them is fine. I'm just sort of interested in the fact the chairman said it. And as I said, I'm actually for it. And I think he's actually trying to speak to Cronulla fans. I don't think he's worried about the West Tigers fans. I don't even think he's worried about the 360 guys or whatever. I think he's talking to Cronulla fans because he's saying we want someone to do their job. If the coach is happy, then get off his back. Now, I don't think the coach is happy all the time, but I think he's happy with what he's got. So I will tell this other story, and I'll probably get into trouble for telling this one too, but I don't really care. It's a good story. On the weekend, a friend of the show was out with his 2 kids. I think they're aged sort of 8, 9, 10, and they saw Nicho at a local shopping center, and the kids were freaking out because they love him. And the dad said, "Well, be polite, go say g'day." They got selfies, made their day. It was amazing, beautiful. And then the dad, who has a connection to Steve Mace, and this is after the interview with Steve Mace did, the dad sent a text to Steve Mace saying, "Hey, the 7 did this. He's made my kid's life. Thank you so much." The chairman sent the text to the halfback. The halfback sent the text back saying, "I want to do more for these kids." The halfback drops round to the friend of the show's house, I think with some merch and the football, hangs out with the kids.
That's amazing.
The kids are now beyond lifelong fans. Now, my only point in saying that is because it's topical. I'm not suggesting that makes him a great footballer, but you can see the kind of mix between good footballer, good human, good footballer, good role model, that whole thing. It's a nice mashup right there. So I just wanted to get that story out. Nicho won't like it. Steve Mace won't like it. At this point, that's okay that they can not like it. But that's just some of the stuff that you don't get to hear. Again, I know people are yelling at me going, that doesn't make him what... I'm not saying it makes him a $1 million player. I'm just letting you know something had happened with the halfback. That's what's going on in Sharkland. Before we get into the mail, Kieran, let's do one more shout out. And this is for our good buddy Jason Hawes at Crips and Crips Real Estate. He's been in the biz for about 25 years. Sutherland Shire real estate agent and expert. Grew up in the area, and he knows the area very, very, very well. If you want to get in touch with him, call him on 0410 417 450 about anything to do with real estate, no matter what it is, big, small, little. If you need advice, 0410 417 450. Jason Hawes, tell him that we sent you because we think he is a hell of a real estate agent. All right, Kieran, it's time to get into the mail. Now, some of our listeners really like the mail. Some of them come up to me and go, that's pretty intense. How do you do it? Others are indifferent. I'm just going to say, don't turn off at the moment. Give it a fair chance because there's a lot of people who want to have their say. It's not all doom and gloom. Some of it is, some of it isn't. Most of it is really, really, well, it's all worthwhile, put it that way. So stick with us. And then if you really get annoyed, turn it off. But first up, we have Blake. And Blake said, that's our fifth half in a row, so half of football, where our red zone attackers let us down. Great yardage, but pretty terrible in the opposition 20. He thinks that comes down to the spine and specifically the 6 and the 7. Nicho will cop a lot of flack for going missing, but Trindle has been pretty average too. He also says it's a very winnable comp. We need to start winning some games to get into that top 4 at the end of the year. So that's a little bit on that, and we'll keep going because there is some more about that, Kieran. But thanks to Blake. Appreciate you. Neil says, looks like after all the off-season hype, we're in for a disappointing season. I don't know what's happened to our attack. It looks disjointed. We had Canberra beat. We needed to defend one set. We couldn't capitalize on Hudson Young being sin-binned. Possession opportunity wasn't a problem. We just didn't do much with the ball. They looked to be lacking energy and a leader to get them over the line. What do you think? It's a long season. Am I overreacting? Up from Neil. I don't think you're overreacting, but let's talk about the halves and just what we did with the ball, what we didn't do with the ball, Kieran. I mean, you didn't really note it before. Is this ringing some bells now for you?
Mate, I didn't think we did a lot with the ball at any point.
Okay.
I thought Nakora really saved us. I think if
Yep.
he didn't do that grubber try where he kicks the ball
Yep.
twice, or if you took him out of that game, I don't know what we would have looked like. But I think it's our halves for sure, but it's also Brayley and it's also Kennedy in that attack. And it seems like once we get closer to the line, we're running out of space, and like the players, to his point, are getting in each other's way. And Ramian's almost got through 3 or 4 times, but hasn't been able to stick that last pass, or has ran when he should have passed, and all that type of thing. So, I think it's a really valid concern. And it's interesting that I don't have the stats off the top of my head, and maybe you might know this just off the top of yours, but how many tries do we score in the opposition's 20 versus long range? Because it feels like majority of the tries that we score are those longer efforts where we've got more space.
Yeah, I don't have it in front of me, but there's definitely been some long range ones, and I think this year we've been less successful in the opposition 20. Last year we were dynamite at it. This year not so much. So they need to work on that. Now there's a lot of feeling, and we'll get to it, that the team are playing a much more structured style of attack in the opposition 20, and our listeners seem to think that's hampering them in opposition to playing ad-lib football like they have been known to do. Do you see that this team is playing too structured at the moment?
Genuinely, mate, when we get into that 20 at the moment, I'm not seeing any real plan. And it seems to be, a little bit of not panic, but we will do, some of the hit ups for that barge over try where we try to get a Hazelton, a Tuku, or Fanua Blake.
Yeah.
But the last 2 weeks, it's really kind of looked just condensed, and maybe it is too much structure, or maybe we're trying to get to a point. But when we get in that 20, we also seem to limit our desire to kick the ball too. So we seem to try and put it through the hands. And I'm not sure what our completion rates are like in the 20, but I'm just seeing once we get into that 20, it just seems to be almost a bit panicky, and that we're not doing what we've done to get us that 80 meters down the field, right? Because when you look at it, and there was a try that we spoke about a few weeks ago against South, where Fanua Blake plays the ball in the middle of the field. He suckers in 5 defenders. They shift the ball out, and then Nicho's able to go over because we created such space on the outside. Since that play, I can't remember us creating space inside the opposition's 20 since. So it's a concern.
Okay. Stephen says Hiroti is a solid replacement. I think I always get nervous when I see his name from years ago when he had a few howlers. He says, why didn't we go on the left side? Hiroti scored down that edge. The Fox broadcasters mentioned that that's where Canberra had trouble. We didn't even try that later when Hudson Young was off. Lack of awareness. I don't want to think about that game too much anymore. Scrap it and move on. It's a great point, and I've been thinking about it a lot, Kieran. Why didn't they go down the left? Our left.
Well,
Why didn't we attack that?
This has been something that's kind of highlighted the season, right? Even back to the first game against the Panthers, where they had Dane Laurie on the wing and Luke Gardner in the centers. Like, we've seemed to have not attacked vulnerable opposition. And going into that game, there was a lot of talk about how bad Timico and I think it was Savage's combination was in defense, and how they weren't, in structure, and how one was going out, one was going in, and one was going out. And we went there once and we had results, and then we stopped. And I think, again, that goes back into that whole game management style of what we're playing. But I think this is the downside of momentum, is once you get yourself into a funk, all these things compound and compound and compound. And I think we need to have that really strong performance where our halves just have a really solid kicking game, get us in the field position, and start to get rid of some of this noise, because it's round 4 and this noise will only get louder and louder as the season goes on, as if we can't capitalize on that space that we're getting or not getting.
But surely we do need to blame the 6 and 7 for not going there, right? Or to a lesser extent,
I think so.
the 1 and the 9 as well. But
I think it's
if we're all screaming at the TV, or those at the ground are screaming, go that way, they didn't even look to go that way. Like, I don't recall it being circumstantial or they couldn't get there. It's like they just didn't.
Yeah, and it's just been a frustration because we've seen other teams exploit that combination there and draw points out of it, and then we just didn't do it. So where does the blame lie on that? Yeah, it goes back to the halfback, absolutely. And I've got criticisms about our forwards not making enough meters, but once, as you said earlier, once we get in that 20, that's on our halves to capitalize on it. But that's also on our 9, that's also on our 1, and that's also on our 6. And this is not me making an excuse for Nicho, because I've been underwhelmed by his performances in the last 2 weeks. But I've also been underwhelmed by Trindles, and I've also been underwhelmed by Kennedy's, and I've also been underwhelmed by Brayley. I think it's a bigger issue than just a Nicho issue. I think it's the whole team right now is probably just feeling a little bit flat. And, we've been at a certain standard now for 3 years under Fitz going into the 4th season. And, we spoke about this last time, is that, I expect us to win 17, 18 more games this season, finish in the top 4. I don't know if that of being at that certain level is starting to now wear at the players, or if they're now starting to get those, second doubts in their own heads. But this game in Perth, it's going to be a really interesting game for us, mate.
Josh says, been a lifelong Sharks fan. I've listened to you for so long. I've got a SharkCast trucker hat signed by some of our premiership winners. Love your work. And Josh sent in a photo of I think it must be the original trucker hat we had, signed by some premiership people. So that's amazing, Josh. Appreciate your support. Thanks for sticking around. Hopefully we can entertain you for a long time to come. He said, I thought the Bulldogs loss would have been a wake-up call, but Canberra ran straight through us. The decision to try and cling on to a two-point lead was baffling. Our attack looked clunky and predictable outside of a few standouts. Having players out is no excuse for a well-coached team. Fitzy and his staff been here long enough to establish their systems. I like some of the things he's done to change the culture and public perspective, but at the same time, I think his mellow personality rubs off on the team. I'd be interested to know how he reacts to 2 poor performances, and while I'm not expecting Nathan Brown levels, i.e. the slap, Not ripping into the team and demanding more would be worrying signs for me. Stay frosty, Josh from North Queensland. So Josh is all the way up there in Townsville or around there. Thanks for your awesome email. Appreciate it. And again, appreciate the support. So, yeah, let's talk about hanging on to that 2-point lead, Kieran, because that was getting more worrying the longer it went. And then when it got to sort of like, I guess 70, 75 minutes, you were sort of thinking, okay, well, barring any Hail Mary, we got this. And I really actually thought, even with the last play from the Sharks where Trindle had the chance to set up Burns and he died with the ball, I still wasn't overly worried because, to be fair, they didn't look like cracking the Sharks all half. And then they did. So what lessons can we take out of the hanging on to the 2 points for so long? Because that's all they scored in that half.
Yeah, and to turn the ball over, I think 95 meters out from our own try line with like a minute left to go, you should be able to defend that. And
yes,
I think they honestly, truly believe that they were going to be able to, but you could see it in the hustle for the try in the end was scored by the center coming from the other side of the field who ran past all the Sharks players. And you saw in some of the scramble defense from the Sharks that, we had Tom Hazleton that was pushing across. We had Trindle there. Like, there was guys that were trying. And then if you actually look when that break is made, you can see 4 or 5 other people from a Sharks perspective standing there ball watching the ball go out the other side. Now, I know some of them, including Nicho, was just involved in trying to take down Hudson Young. But if Nicho wants his confidence back, and if Nicho wants the media narrative to change around him, if Nicho sprints across the other side of the field and makes that tackle and shuts that play down and wins the game for the Sharks, that's all we're talking about this week. We're not talking about the inability to score points. We're not talking about holding on to a 2-point lead. I strongly disagree with how we were playing because, again, it felt like we were just backing our defense and we weren't trying any risk to score any points. Again, if we win that game by 2 points, you say that's a masterstroke and all that type of stuff. But when we took the 2, we never really got into attacking position once again after, they kicked the ball off to us and we took it out of our own end and all that type of stuff. So for me, that comes back onto our kicking game. Our halves should have been able to pin them back into the corners. Our defense, we then get another shot at it. But that was a wasted opportunity when Hudson Young went to the bin, especially with the defensive deficiencies that they've had on their edges as well. So, yeah, completely agree. It was, not ideal to just sit there on the 2 points and hope for the best.
Now, as far as the coach, how he reacts, I mean, we're not in the sheds. We know people that are. And I can tell you that he's not, what's the quote? I wouldn't even say he's got a mellow personality, to be honest. I think that when you see him in the presser, it's not the true guy. I'm not saying he's being someone else, but that's just not all that he is. There's a lot more to him than the press conference, Fitzy. And I can tell you that he hates losing. He hates losing. I'm going to speculate and say more than me, you, Josh, and a whole lot of people put together. Like, he hates it. So, that's all I'm going to say on that, because it's not my place to stick up for the coach or whatever, or also pretend that I'm his best mate, because I'm not. But I do know him a little bit. I've had experience with him, and I can tell you that he's as competitive as anyone I've ever met, aside from maybe Paul Gallen. So that's from Josh in North Queensland. Now, Shane left a review on our website, sharkcast.com.au. Appreciate it, Shane. He said, outstanding. He's given us a 5 out of 5, Kieran. He said, loves the podcast, consistently offers factual, well-balanced perspective, doesn't resort to coarse language and smut, which is awesome. And you can hear the effort that goes on each episode. Thank you. Your work genuinely adds value to the lives of Sharks fans. Oh, my heart. Thanks, Shane. Awesome. Appreciate you so much. Thank you so much for thinking that and for letting us know that as well. Really appreciate it. Danny Lee's been in touch. It's not Danny Lee from the 90s, but it's a different Danny Lee, regular listener. No, don't be disappointed. Danny Lee's his own. This Danny Lee is his own person. He says, I can't fathom how we've gone backwards so far this year. The halves look like they're going through the motions and they're trying to play to the game plan. This was obvious when we were a man up on the sin bin, didn't attack the side with the overlap. They're not playing what is in front of them. Go back to Heinz's Dally M season. He was playing off the cuff, eyes up football. Now, Danny attributes this to the coach. The style we play at the moment is robotic, and I don't blame the players. They're playing structured. There's no room to play what's in front of them. Do you have an opinion on that as far as the coach goes, Kieran?
I've seen a little bit of talk about this over the last, sort of 2 weeks with these couple of back-to-back losses. But, going back to how Nicho played in 2022, was it? Yeah, it was 2022 or
Yes.
2023. Yeah.
Two, yeah.
I look, if you look at it from a halves perspective, he's now got a more traditional half next to him versus Matt Moylan, right? So he's now got another half who can actually organize for him, can do the kicking, can actually do a lot of the structured piece, right? That historically we've associated Nicho with not liking, right? When we think of Nicho at his best, he's running, he's creating overlaps, he's creating space, he's doing all those things, which again is more like a secondary fullback /5'8" than a number 7, right? So how do we get him back to that style while still using Trindle and all that type of stuff? Because Matt Moylan, you would not say is an organizing number 7, right? Matt Moylan was a very similar sort of player, right, with that relentless attack. And that year, it seemed like we had a very definitive plan for the quick play the balls and to shoot out and just to always be running like we were playing with 3 fullbacks. Now we've got a traditional half who is wearing the number 6. Again, don't worry about the numbers. He's our halfback. It's Braden Trindle. And then we've got Nicho trying to do the Nicho things, right? Expectations have obviously changed on Nicho because we've seen how great he can play in that role. But I think it's, look, sometimes you get into a bit of a funk, and if they can come back on the field and get their attack going like it was in the first half against South, a lot of this stuff goes away. So I don't think it's completely broken. I don't know if it's a confidence thing because, again, whenever it comes to Nicho, everyone says it's a confidence issue and all that type of stuff. And sometimes I think Nicho needs a body language coach. I know he's got a few coaches, but his body language can look a lot worse than I think he's actually going on in his mind, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if we're too structured. I don't know if we are structured. I don't know what is going on with our attack right now. But I think right now, the one thing we need to see from our halves is a strong kicking game, and the rest will come off the back of that.
Danny also says, I think Hiroti has earned the wing spot over Stone Street until Sione returns. He looks safer, and maybe it's the experience or maturity, but Stone Street needs to go back to the reserves to find his form again. Now, we'll come back to that, Kieran, because there's a little bit of that later on, I'm pretty sure. So we'll come back to that. But Danny says, let's get the win, up Cronulla. So thanks, Danny. Appreciate you.
How good was Blake? Danny Lee back in the 90s, though?
Workhorse, brother. Big boy.
Yeah, just hard.
Hard country. The classic country prop. Like, he's a big unit and loyal. Very loyal player. Number of games, like lots and lots of games for the Sharks. And one of those guys you would have loved to have seen win a title just to be even more of a legend than he is. Blake says, as our Fox stats man, can you drum up some stats on the play the ball speeds for the Sharks? Watching the game against Canberra, I felt like they worked harder in the tackle, putting blokes in their back. I don't feel we do the same. So I had a very quick look at this, and just so I don't put people to sleep, this is what I came up with. A very fast play the ball conceded, Kieran. So that's when you barely can contain a guy. So not good.
Yep.
Cronulla have the 6th most in that stat. So they're the 6th worst after 5 games. Canberra
so that means
have
we're not
the 4th
holding
best.
Players down long enough?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
When it gets to a fast play the ball, so that's kind of just a bit less. So probably, I think we define it as maybe 1.5 to 2 seconds. Or, yeah, that's right. Yeah. We're the 2nd worst. Canberra the 5th best. When it gets to neutral, so just your regular, what you might expect a normal holding of a player in the play the ball, Cronulla again are ranked 6th worst. Canberra 7th. Now for slow play the balls, so we're talking about defense, not attacks. So slow play the balls, holding guys down. We have the 2nd fewest of those, so we're the 2nd worst. Canberra have the 3rd most, so they're the 3rd best. And for very slow, that's borderline penalty situation, but you sort of want it. Cronulla have the fewest, Canberra have the fifth best. So this year, with slowing down the ruck, it hasn't been so great. It's only 5 games. Last year, we were pretty good at it. It could change within 2 games and we could rise up. These things are very up and down as far as played the ball stats go. And again, I'm putting everyone to sleep, but Blake did want to hear about that. So appreciate that, Blake. He said the last 2 weeks we've been out enthused in every aspect of the game. The Rabbitohs first half was the benchmark, ruthless defense, and then great attack. He says the 4th tackle Will Kennedy hit up is killing me. I've never been on Will Island. I don't think Will's got his own island, to be fair. That said, after round 2, I was eating my hat, but I'm back to square one now. I wouldn't mind seeing Dykes have a go if he's fit this year. Up, and keep the content coming. That's from Blake, legendary Blake. Yeah, let's talk about the 4th tackle Kennedy hit ups. What's going on there?
Yeah. Well, I think it just plays into that chaotic nature that we're playing with, which makes me think that we're not playing with structure, that we're just losing our marbles. And there's been so many times where Kennedy's been tackled on the 4th, or one of the halves have been tackled on the 4th, and it just sucks all the momentum out of that last play option, because then we really only got either a slow play the ball, because Will's traditionally not getting that fast play the ball, which, by the way, I think that stat is extremely telling, and hopefully we can turn that around. But then we're just not doing anything, because, again, like, it's that last play the ball, and it's like we're throwing the ball out to a half who's 9 times out of 10 standing still, and we're just hoping for some sort of magic, and then we're drifting across. Like, it's a disaster. So, look, there is no Will Kennedy Island. I think Will was establishing a jetty for a while there, and I was also on that jetty after a while. Again, these first 2-3 games I think were really good for us, but again, now this is where we need to see that sort of impact and that step up. And it's such a shame Iceland's injured, but we've got to make do with what we've got. So I don't know how Dykes went in reserve grade last week. I've read some stuff. He had a few tackle breaks and things like that, but I wouldn't expect any changes anytime soon.
Now, Dykes will need, I would think, a couple of months down there just to get his body right. You know, he's been out for a long time, so I wouldn't expect that to be an answer. Same with Jesse Colquhoun to an extent. Like, people are saying, bring him in. I think he needs like 5, 6, 7 weeks of footy before you throw him in the big leagues.
And he didn't really play last year. I think he had, 2-3 games last year before he got his injury?
Yeah.
So
both
really
guys
like
have barely played footy. Yeah. The other thing on Will Kennedy is, if he's getting tackled on the 4th and we're putting it up on the 5th, he can't really chase through for the bombs. He can't be part of the attacking backline a lot of the time. So that's why, like, I know in NRL wide, we sometimes do see a halfback or a 5/8 get tackled on the 4th. You know, Cleary gets tackled a lot on the 4th. But for a fullback to do it as regularly as what's happening with Will, it's a bit weird.
Well, and the one play that I'm so sick and tired of as a Sharks fan right now is the crossfield bomb in the middle of nowhere to Ronnie with no intention or purpose. And we're hoping for a bat back and we're hoping for a deflection. And it just seems to me a real lack of game plan of what do we want to do when we get down there. Because more often than not, we're going to this, it's not a proper bomb, it's not a torpedo, it's this crossfield kick, and we're hoping for the best where Ronnie can cause a deflection, a defender rushes out, and we can get something. And we've had some luck with it, but you can't build your attack around that. So we need Will in those attacking plays. We need Will on those sweep plays. We need Will creating numbers. And we've seen him do it. So, I keep going back to, we need a proper team performance to fix this, because it's not just on the halves. It's not just on Brayley. It's not just on Will. It's on all of them at the moment. So they all need to step up.
With the kick to Ronaldo, I'm okay with it if there's a swarm of them. So if it's him and who's his center? Is it Jesse? I don't know. Whoever the center is next to him. And then the second rower, if it's the 3 of them going for the area and Ronnie's job is to bat it back and they're there waiting. We saw it against the Cowboys in the final last year. There was some success there. But yeah, you can't just pop it up every time and just Ronnie goes up and see what happens. Like, that's not a game plan.
All we're doing. It's all we're doing, right? And so I think it's Ero's normally next to him, and same with Wilton. So when we had those 2 guys out, that's what kind of got my concern up about how does the team look here. So when you take out Ero, who's been one of our better attacking weapons this year, and Wilton, who's a great second rower as well, you are limiting what you can do from an attack perspective. But at the same time, we need to game plan for that, because we've seen Fitz come up with great game plans when players are missing. We go back to that game versus Melbourne last year. They reinvented how we played that style for that game, and we rolled through Melbourne, right? So there's some tweaks that have to be made.
Shout out to Mr. Paisleys. They're supplying me with some fuel, and I met. I've actually run into a bunch of our listeners down there, and they're on the Paisleys train. So everyone who I've met down there in the past couple of weeks, you know who you are. Shout out to you guys and girls. Matt says Sam Stone Street's a great young player, but I don't think we can underestimate the loss of Katoa. Such a solid and, in my opinion, underrated player we're really missing. He also says we need to make one of our playmakers put their hand up and be the dominant half. I don't think it's working how they're directing the team right now. In my opinion, Trindle needs to take control. Hines plays second fiddle. He then says Springsteen forever, which is obviously a non-negotiable. Springsteen forever. So, yeah, more Stone Street chat. We'll get into that a bit later. I think there's some more about Sammy. Dominant halves, Kieran. We've seen it work when they both go nuts in the Souths game and against the Cowboys a few times recently in the last 6 months. But when it doesn't work, like last two games, and they're just sort of floating around, not much is happening, it clearly doesn't work. Do we need one of them to be the boss?
And I've mentioned this a few times on this podcast, is that if you look at the personalities of Blake Brayley, Will Kennedy, Trindle, and Nicho, they were all very polite, soft-spoken people, right? And you see them on the field. Nicho is very vocal with how he directs things. Trindle's vocal as well. But sometimes you need that James Maloney, Michael Ennis style player who sort of says, I don't care what you guys want to do. We're doing it my way. Follow me and I'll take it. Like sometimes we need one of those players to step up and take the game by the throat. And I think that has happened a couple of times in the last 2 weeks, especially where we've got into that 20 and we're waiting for one of those halves to step up and say, nah, follow me, we'll get the job done. And that's where Nicho gets his criticism from, because he's on the big bucks and that is the expectation. He's played for Australia. He's played for New South Wales. He's won a Dally M. He's the guy that should be demanding the board and making things happen there. So, look, I do agree with that point that we do need to have one of them stand up. But I go back through 2-3 weeks ago and everybody was saying, Fitzy's cracked the code. Look at these two dominant halves. You know, at least they're sharing the load. One's up, one's down, all that type of stuff. And it kind of reminds me of a really weird time of Sharks fandom. And I'm going to cast your mind back 20 years, Sam. Adam Dykes, Brett Kamali. Two really good players, but we just couldn't ever get that. Yeah, and we couldn't get that combination right. Now, I think Nicho and Tricky have an ability to be a much better combination than that. But we have seen it in the past where two halves have not gelled together. Recently at Parramatta, there was Corey Norman and Mitchell Moses. They took out Corey Norman. Mitchell Moses took over the reins. Parra went on a huge run, right? So I'm not saying we're at that level yet, but we need one of those guys to sort of say, all right, look, you know, we're all equal here, but when stuff's got to go down, it's coming to me.
So, obvious statement, but either there has to be one of them in charge, unspoken is fine, but one of them has to take the role, or there has to be an understanding when last week, and we're not looking like attacking anything, one of them needs to wink to the other and go, I'm the guy, watch me go, because it's no use both of you not doing anything.
Or it has to come from Brayley at dummy half, where Brayley's going to keep servicing the ball out to these guys and go, you know what, I'm going to make something happen here. But like you look at Starling, like Starling jumped out of hooker, puts in the short kick for Hudson Young to score a try. Again, when the Sharks were super successful, we had Michael Ennis in at number 9, who would just jump out to his own thing. And it also goes back onto our fullback. And you know, Ponga at the Knights. I'm not comparing Will to Ponga, but what I'm saying is sometimes when the Knights halves are not getting it done, Ponga injects himself in there. And when I talk about the personalities of our halves, it's not an attack on them as people. It's more so styles make fights and different body shapes make forward packs. And when you're looking at a spine, you need different personalities and different care factors and different attitudes towards attacking the game and all that type of stuff. And my only criticism of our spine right now is I just feel we don't have a dominant voice. And I saw a question be posed online this week, and I'll ask you this one just quickly, Sam. Who is our dominant leader from a vocal standpoint out on the field when it's 2018 or whatever, the game's on the line? Who is the vocal leader speaking out there for the Sharks?
Looking at the team lineup, I would perhaps suggest out of the back seven, it might be Trindle, and out of the forwards, potentially Cam McInnes.
So this is my point is that when I hate going back to 2016, but it's just the easiest way to do it. We had vocal people like Fafita, Ennis, Maloney, Gallen, like these guys that would
Luke
just
Lewis.
literally Luke Lewis. They would pull the Wade Graham, pull the team together, lay down the law, and say, "Stick with me, follow me. We're going to do it this way." And I think as Fonua Blake becomes more comfortable, he's going to do a lot of that through his actions. And I think we saw that in the second half when he came on. And then there was a period where we had Hazelton, Fonua Blake, and Tooks on, and that was the best that we looked because Fonua Blake was saying to those other forwards, "Follow me," and he was getting that roll on and that momentum. But again, from a vocal standpoint, I look at the squad that we've got, and somehow we've got to get a louder voice, I think, in the room on that playing field for us right now. Because when I look at where I think we are kind of lacking at the moment, I have no issue with Cam McInnes as captain or his leadership.
Yeah.
But I want somebody that is extremely going to be, that voice, because Cam's going to do it through his actions as well.
I do want to stress, though, for people in the media, people who work for the Sharks, they have access to the field sometimes. And I've been lucky to be at ground level during a game past few years. They're all a lot louder than what you might think. So Will Kennedy is not a quiet mouse, right?
Yes.
Oregon Kaufusi, he talk. Like, they all talk. They all verbalize. Yes. Some are a little bit more louder than others. So when I say Cam McInnes, he's a bit barky. When I say Trindle, he's a bit, cheeky little halfback.
Nicho is too.
Nicho is too. They all communicate. But
absolutely.
Your point, you're saying who is that leader going, hey. Yeah, I think that maybe we could improve on that stuff. Pete says, first email for the year, enjoying the pod. You bring me back from the edge after a loss. And I can tell you, Kieran, we did the live stream last week. There was a lot of bringing, or at least trying to bring people back from the edge. And we'll do it again.
Went for ages.
It did. We'll do it again this week after Manly, but it'll be a win this week, so we don't have to worry so much. But we're going to be live streaming pretty much most weeks where we can. So stick to your socials, stick to your subscription, subscribe everywhere, and we'll pop up and we'll have a chat after the game. But Pete says, after watching the Broncos and Storm on the weekend, it highlights how far our spine is off the mark at the moment, with the exception of Brayley. The other three are not in the same league. I try to keep the faith that they can get better, but it's hard. Trindle is close sometimes, and Will is solid, but still not close to the aforementioned spines. All we can do is have faith that Fitzy can bring them up to speed. Sharks till I die. Sharky Pete. So Pete's saying that our spine as a whole, the four guys, they're not top tier at the moment, which I think is a fair statement.
Well, the one thing that frustrates me about this whole player market, and this is going on a tangent right now, but players right now can sign contracts whenever they want, right? We re-signed Tricky a month or so ago, just before the season started. If Tricky entered the open market right now with DCE leaving Manly, Tricky would get a lot more money than what the Sharks are paying him right now. Okay, yeah. So I think we sometimes judge our players a little bit harshly just because we live that roller coaster with them week in and week out. But there are a lot of teams that would take on Blake Bailey, Will Kennedy. There are teams that would take on Nicho, maybe not at the $1 million a year that he's on right now, but there are teams that 100% would give him a shot, and Will would find a spot somewhere, right? So again, we've got to make best with what we have. It's interesting for me what would have happened if we could have kept a fully fit Ison and we were running into this sort of bubbling, disjointed attack. Would we have made any changes? Historically, it's been a no from Fitz, but over the last season especially, he did start to make some changes. He's not going to make changes after 1-2 games. I think if we do run into a questionable performance this week, which hopefully we don't, we might see something. But we're going to have to back him to get the most out of these players for what we've got. Because, again, these players are in demand. And it's crazy what Tricky would get on the open market right now, especially after the game like against South that he had a few weeks ago.
Stephen says, clearly for all to see, we currently lack a will to win when the game is tight or there for the taking. As a member and supporter, it's infuriating and something I thought the club had gotten past. At the start of the season, I had a belief the premiership window was open, but the last 2 weeks, I now have it firmly shut. A few things need to improve. Our forwards need to stand up and give the halves a platform. AFB is the only one doing his job. We need our forwards to get us out of trouble, not our back five. They can help, but the forwards need to do the bulk of the work. Stone Street isn't quite where he needs to be. Once Hero is back, Hiroti needs to come to the wing. He's 110% player all day long and never gives up. So I disagree about the forwards not giving the halves the platform because, as we've said, we spend a lot of time up the other end. I understand it's probably one forward doing it, and that's not great. But we are in an okay position. As far as the forwards getting us out of trouble rather than the back five, I'm super torn on this one, Kieran, because for me, I guess at the end of the day, win the game. It doesn't matter how you get to the other side of the field. How do we get those forwards? They're not going to be on tackles 1, probably tackles 2, right? Given the way the game's played these days. So tackle 3, 4, 5, tackle 4, you might be looking to attack. So you really got tackle 3 for a forward. Like, it really does. It's not like the old days where it was 5 hit-ups and kick the ball, So I'm sort of torn on that, but I know what Stephen is saying because you look at Oregon Kafusi, who's been the whipping boy all week on the socials and the forums and that kind of thing, 3 runs for 30 meters, whatever it was. And you go, yeah, that's no good. Like, why aren't you doing more? And I'm not suggesting he can't. But then I'm also saying, well, the backs do a lot of this stuff. Like, well, are we going to complain about the backs not getting meters then? You know what I mean?
Are the backs doing too much? And I don't know the answer to this, but we do a lot coming out of our own end. But once we're starting to get into that good attacking field, I just think we need to see more. Like, looking at Toby's stats from the weekend, 3 runs for 34 meters, 15 tackles off the bench, like with 2 missed tackles. Like, we need more from these players that we've invested a lot of money into, especially if they're only going to be on the field for 23 minutes or something like that. So when you've got the Hazeltons coming off the bench for 20 to 25 minutes, Toby's and all that, we need them to pack a punch. And again, we looked the best when we had Fanua Blake on the field, we had Hazelton and Tooks. And I know Cam McInnes is a great player and, a tremendous leader and all these other things, but our go forward is suffering sometimes when we have a forward like Kafusi, who is a defensive orientated forward. We have back rowers like Nicho and Wilton, who are not meter eaters, but they're hole punching back rowers, and they're 2 of the best at it. And then we have a lock who is undersized and is going to take 12 hit-ups for 94 meters, but make 38 tackles. I think there is a place for Cam in this team, 110%, but I just don't think when we take Cam off, we should be putting on Daniel Atkinson to give us 6 hit-ups, 65 meters, but still keep us undersized when we have Hazelton, Toby, and Tooks on the bench, right? So I think for us to address the go forward, I think it's all fine and good to have Kafusi be that defensive-minded middle, and he can be quite good at it. He can be very aggressive in defense and hold down the ruck, but we need to work out how to integrate the Talakais, the Hazeltons, the Rudolph, the Hamanuelis into the game plan. And I truly believe that once we can fix how we work with our bench and unlock the go-forward potential that we have, because our side is huge when we actually get on the field. And it's one thing to have big players, but if they're big players and useless, shout out to 2003, no names named, we saw a game plan that was built around huge humans, but they weren't the best rugby league players. We've got guys now that are tremendous rugby league players, but are of tremendous size. We've got to use that together to get the quick play the balls, to let Brayley get out, to let Nicho run onto the ball. And then I think we're going to start seeing a little bit more of that 2022 style of Sharks football. But yeah, it's doing my head in at the moment, mate, if you can't tell.
So apologies to Oregon Kafusi. He ran for almost 90 meters in the weekend, and he actually wasn't too bad. And I think that I'm reading too much into
He's
other
copped a lot
people's
of heat
opinions
online.
on that. The game before was the 3 for 30 meters. So apologies to Oregon Kafusi there. Looking at that bench, so Toby 3 runs 34 meters in 21 minutes. Tuku had 17 minutes and ran 8 times for 68 meters. Tom had 34 minutes, ran for about 90 meters. So just depends. I mean, I can't see when Toby was on if we had heaps of ball up, so I'm not going to rip the guy apart. But you see where all this is going. Let's go
Do we have
back.
to change that front row though, Sam? Do you think that if we had Kafusi
Well,
coming off the bench and doing that holding down the middle role, but
mm,
starting with a bigger body with more oomph, it would change things?
it would change things. I mean, it's not worth the risk trying it. Like you could try it. Look, we've seen it before. And I think last week he was a lot better than the week before, to be fair. So uh, maybe. I mean, a change up is fine especially if you're not going to sack guys. You're just going to say, hey, it's a different role this week. It doesn't create bad vibes or anything. And yeah, maybe. Now, where was I up to? Was it Stephen? I think it was. Yeah. So
Yes.
on Stone Street, and there might be some more here, but the people are sort of saying give him a rest. And I do like what he says about Hiroti. He's 100% all day, which is true. Like he's never perfect Hiroti, but he doesn't ever give up. I'm not suggesting Stone Street does either because he doesn't. I felt tremendously bad for Stone Street under those high balls because those high balls were ridiculous. And I don't know if a bunch of guys would have done better. They probably just look better in failing. You know what I mean? Like he was just all hands and all arms, and it kind of got a bit comical to be blunt. I think he's doing a good job for a young fella, but I'm not against maybe giving him a week off. I don't know. I don't. But then what do you do? Do you bring him back? I don't know how to do it without killing the guy's confidence. I don't think he's the reason we're losing games. It's a tough one.
I am surprised he has not been targeted more with the kicking game and with
I think it'll come,
opposition's
my
attack.
friend. I think it'll come.
Yeah, and I go back to the game last year versus the Warriors. I think it was his second game in first grade where Sean
Yeah.
Johnson and DWZ just attacked him and they won the game off the back of that, right? So
Yeah.
I look at Sam and I compare him to Kale Iro, and I think I might have spoke about this before, but Kale, when he was the same age, had played, I think, one NRL game, right? And now Sam's going into his 10th, 11th. But Kale then went and did that apprenticeship for when he was 23 years old all throughout reserve grade, right? Because Fitz had certain parts of his game that he really wanted Kale to fix. He didn't want to let Kale go because Kale had opportunities to leave the Sharks. And I think he might have gone to the Sharks once or twice and said, hey, I want to take this up.
Yeah.
And the club said, no, we believe in you. Stick with us. You're going to come out the back of this a better player. I think Sam right now is in that same sort of realm. But the issue that we've got is because we have such a salary cap that is spent on, no disrespect, players that their worst game is probably a 6, but their best game might be an 8. We have a lot of that mid-tier players, so we don't have a lot of depth below it. So outside of Hiroti, who is probably on not a huge wicket, he might be on minimum wage, he might be on a little bit above. Sam is probably in a similar boat, but again, Sam has tremendous upside, right? And he's got a lot of work to do to fix up some issues in his game. And I think if you went to Sam probably 5 months ago and told him, mate, you're going to play the first 10, 12 weeks of the NRL season before Katoa gets back, he might have even been a little bit shocked by that, right? It's not to say that he's not prepared or he's not ready for it, but it's a huge learning curve for these guys. And the errors are so costly, especially for a team that has large expectations to contend for a title and to contend for a top 4 spot. So we don't have the time to let Sam gain confidence under the high ball. It's an expectation that Sam will take those high balls. It's funny though, because Katoa can have a howler or 200 high ball as well. But Katoa gives us a lot of different things around finishing, yardage and all that type of stuff. So, I still have really high hopes for Sam, and I think he will get there. I just think it's going to be an interesting scenario. Would I play Hiroti over Sam? I'm not against it. I think there's some really valid, very valid thoughts there. I don't know what that does to his confidence long term, but again, I don't think that's the concern. The concern for us is winning each week now. And if we think that Hiroti can play a better role than Sam, I'm all for it. But I have seen enough of Sam to believe in him, and I still do believe in him.
Okay. Aaron has been in touch. Aaron said he hasn't missed an episode since 2017. So I don't know if he missed a few in 2015, 16. I'm not making fun of it, but when I saw that, I was like, dude, that's amazing. Thank you so much. And there are plenty of Aarons out there, so appreciate you, Aaron. He says, people calling for mass changes is ridiculous. We can all agree that attack was off. You can tell it's a bit disjointed, but it will click. It just hasn't yet. I thought the kicking game was atrocious. I have no idea why the halves weren't putting it as high as possible and allowing our chasers to either compete or allow the chasers to get their defense in order. He says, Raymond and Nicho are out of form, but every footballer goes through that. And he put every in capital letters. Raymond needs to simplify his game, run hard. The rest will come back. Other than that, we shouldn't be blowing up the team. He did say, sorry, I left out a paragraph. He'd be giving Stone Street a rest for Hiroti. He's seasoned and a bigger replacement that will give us good yardage. Bigger in a, I don't know which way he's bigger, but he said, other than that, I wouldn't be blowing up the team. We're close to having a 4-1 season. I know it isn't that, but that's how close things have been. That's just my opinion. Look forward to the pod, Aaron. Your opinion is very valid. Thank you so much, Aaron. And I like what he says about Raymond and Nicho. Like, the confidence will come back. And we've seen that with Nicho over the years. Like, we've seen him come in and out of form. There's no secret there. And these guys, they're never, for me personally, when I think about the Sharks team under Fitzgibbon as a whole, the team and also the players, they're never down on confidence for that long. And people might go, oh, Nicho, it's like, no, you go back and look at Nicho's games. When he's been down, it hasn't been for that long. Like, he'll bounce back. And sure, there might be another one coming up where he's a bit off. But there's not like 20 game stretches where he's just terrible. So I like what Aaron says about the bounce back.
Yeah, 100%. And if you look at Nicho's 2013, when he first made Origin, and then he had that incident, and then people said blah, blah, blah. He ended up fighting his way into the Kangaroos team, and then he ended up playing State of Origin last year as well. So again, people I think kind of look at Nicho as he's been on a downward spiral for a couple of years, but this time last year he was leading the Dally M votes. He was in the State of Origin team as the halfback picked after Nathan Cleary. He was coming off playing for Australia. So again, Nicho's not been in a huge funk like it might seem if you listen to the media. I do agree that Jesse Raymond's been in some unfortunate form recently, and it's very uncharacteristic for the Jesse that we've seen over the last couple of years. But Jesse can fix that really quickly. He's so talented, and I'm a big believer in him.
All right, Shane left a message on our website. I say message, it's like a note, email. I can't really describe it, but basically there's a contact form and you can just leave us messages and we get them, and it's really cool. So Shane said, disappointing that we are 0-3 from games that were a grind. There is evidence, however, that there was a gut buster in Vegas which had an effect. Even the Premiers have lost every game since then. Also, is it time for Stone Street to play his trade in Reggie's for a couple of weeks, Hiroti? So we've been through that. Love your work. Warm regards from Shane. Thanks so much, Shane. Appreciate you. Vegas, it's something. I don't know what it is, but something's going on. But hopefully we bounce back this week. Shane, thank you for jumping on sharkcast.com.au. Really, really appreciate it. Nathan says, thank you for what you do. Each SharkCast episode is a highlight of my week. That's pretty nice of Nathan. Thanks, Nathan. We appreciate that very, very much. I say it a lot. I mean it every single time. Thank you, Nathan. I wanted to bring up a question around travel and as a byproduct, less home games at Shark Park. I know Fitzy and the team would say travel doesn't matter, but watching our second half performances, I tend to disagree. In the second half, we look tired, lethargic, and lack cohesion. That may or may not be a sign of fatigue. It's too early to write off the season, obviously, but we do need to start jagging a few wins, even if they aren't pretty. If we don't, Kieran, and the season gets away from us, Do you think it's something the Sharks will reflect on with the travel and realize it did not put us in the best positions to succeed? And he mentions Vegas, he mentions Perth. It may have helped the team brand, but not team success. Is team success more important than the brand? So there's some heavy stuff from Nathan, which is awesome. Question, Kieran, do you think they'll look back on this season and review the travel situation? Because a couple of them were choices.
I am so upset with this game being in Perth. Like I have no idea who made the decision for it to be this game to take to Perth. It makes no sense to me. The fact that we're
now,
playing
are you talking about the timing of the game?
I'm talking about, well, one, that it's early in the season, and two, we did Vegas a few months ago. Well, a month ago, just over. But for me, it's more so the fact that we're playing against a Sydney team. It's school holidays here in Sydney, and we've given away a home game, and we've sent it over to Perth. Why aren't we playing the Cowboys in Perth? Why aren't we playing the Gold Coast Titans in Perth that are a low-drawing team for us in Sydney?
So I need to find this out factually completely, but I've got a feeling the Sharks went, yeah, we'll take a home game to Perth, give us some money, Perth, yada, yada, yada. I'm not aware that they knew it was going to be so close to Vegas, Townsville, etc. And I'm also not aware if they knew who they were going to be playing. So I want to give them benefit of the doubt till I find that out. But I understand what you're saying. And just on that, our good friend Mark sent me a message and he said, who decided to surrender our home game against Manly to Perth? It's for the Steve Rogers Cup that should always be played at our home ground or, I guess, Brookvale. I'm quite disgusted with this. So that's from Mark. And that's in regards to the Steve Rogers Cup, which is another thing to talk about. And thank you, Mark, for letting us know about that. So let's get to the other question: team success versus the brand. I mean, I think success is like if you win a comp, it's probably better than winning over an American fan or whatever. But how do you juggle those two things? Because it is a business, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Or
again, the business all comes back off wins, right? The more Sharks are winning football games, the more jerseys we're selling, the more T-shirts we're selling, the more people are coming to our games, the more people are engaging with our sponsors, right? The more we can charge sponsors because we're getting more press, we're on TV more, and all that type of stuff. So I think they go hand in hand. I think it was a misstep to put a hand up for this Perth game. I understand that we've taken games to Port Macquarie and stuff like that last year, and we don't have that agreement this year. So we've said, all right, we'll do the Perth thing instead. I think the NRL probably had some intentions around the 20th team or 19th team, whatever it's going to be, with the Perth Bears situation, but that seems like that's been completely derailed. So this whole thing seems like a bit of a misstep. But I have a real problem with us taking a game. We don't play at Shark Park for like 8, 6, 7 weeks. Like it's a long time, and I get that we're going to have weeks, back-to-back weeks, and all that type of stuff. We're going to run, down a hill and all that type of stuff. But to take a game versus a Sydney team when there is not one other NRL game in Sydney this weekend over to Perth, I just think it was a baffling decision. I think that we've taken the money on this one, and I don't agree with it.
Yeah, and so again, I think, Kieran, that the Sharks probably weren't aware that it was the only game in Sydney for starters. So I'm not here to defend their choice. I'm not defending that. I personally would play at Shark Park every week. I that's just my feeling. But I think it is a bit circumstantial, the decisions and why. But ultimately, yes, of course, it comes down to money and awareness and exposure and the whole thing. Liam's been in touch, and Liam was in touch with us about a month ago, I think, 3 weeks ago. And he and his dad are big listeners of the show. They're big Sharks fans. And he says, my dad, Kevin, says hello, and he's still hanging in there for the second premiership. So keep hanging in there, Kev. He said the current problem, he thinks, Liam, is ill discipline and attitude. They've struggled for 3 years with tight finishes, and all they had to do against the Raiders was to stop the play. He says the colors black, white, and blue mean something. The emblem of the shark means something, and the name Cronulla means something. Add it all together and fight as one. Fight for the club, the name, pride of being a shark. Simple and ferocious and tough, and don't let anyone stand in your way. Play for everything that stands for the club and go out of your way to win for the fans who come out and support you every week, near or far. That's what it means. So a bit of inspo from Liam. He said, let's get the win in Perth. I believe they can do it with the right attitude. So appreciate that, Liam. Hello, Kevin, as well. Good luck on the weekend with the Perth game for all of us. You'll love this one, Kieran. Rob says, I've been a Shark supporter all my life. In saying that, I'm also a Dragons hater. There's probably nobody on this earth that hates the Dragons more than me. And just as a little asterisk, Rob has never met me, for starters. Anyway, benefit of the doubt, Rob. He says, with all the frustration and torment from Dragons fans over the years, I can now say we've finally been owning these rotten things from Wollongong. My hatred for them is addictive. I hate them as much as I love the Sharks. And if the hideous looking joke of a club win this week and go ahead of us on the ladder, I swear you'll be hearing from me here. Now, he's a bit frustrated. So Rob's a bit frustrated with the Sharks. 2 winnable games, both losses. He doesn't want to watch against Manly because his wife is a Manly fan. And he says the stress is going to kill him. It might end up in divorce. He gets very angry when he watches the Sharks lose and the wife has to leave the room. I'm just reading this out as it is. He also says, I can't hear excuses from podcasts each week blaming Vegas. What can we do to get these boys up? We need to pull away from the rubbish sides like the Dragons and get on top of the ladder into the top 4 before it gets away from us. Cheers from Rob. Rob, thanks for being in touch, man. Appreciate it. Appreciate your hatred for the Dragons, especially. I will say, lighten up on the Sharkies, lighten up on your family. You're going to hate these words. And sometimes I back away from these words, but I'm going to say it just for you, Rob. It's just a game, brother. Good luck this weekend. Appreciate you being in touch. Don't be a stranger. Deegan says, first time writing in, long time, proud, and very strict Shark supporter. I served in the military for 25 years, becoming a WO1. Now, do you know what that is, Kieran, a WO1?
Unfortunately, I don't.
Okay, Deegan, all respect. I'm sure that's something amazing. Don't know what that means. We'll Google it later. Started my career training new recruits in self-defense. I've been listening to you guys since day one. Sam with Adam, starting as fresh podcasters to the current crew. I get more impressed when I hear you. So keep up the good work. Kieran and Gary, great co-podcasters. Well done. No mention of the other lads, but Kieran and Gary
Take
get
that,
a mention.
Josh.
That's cool. Joshy, yeah. So he says, the Sharks have everybody concerned right now. Here's the real problem. Craig Fitzgibbon keeps saying for the last couple of years the same things after every loss, but never really fixes anything. He's too soft to be a great coach. You need to be tough when you need to be tough and make tough choices. He doesn't. So just on that, Deegan, yeah, we've talked about this on and off throughout the past 3 years about Craig Fitzgibbon and his personality and the changes, no changes. From a coaching point of view, yeah, he's not a huge changer of teams and that kind of thing, but behind the scenes, he's a bit tougher than he lets on. So just keep that in mind. But he says the whole team should be playing for their jersey. The going gets tough. Like in the Bulldogs game, you get tougher and you go back at them twice as hard. The team should be proud, playing for the colours, the fans, not backing down, fighting for the jersey, and also for the fortress at home. All these things combined make a tough, resilient, and scary team. We'd be very proud of them every week if they played that way. He says, tired from Vegas, sickness, 6 away games, blah, 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 is just an excuse. They're professionals. They've been together long enough. They need to know they should know what they're doing as a team. He says, Sam, you should be sitting in that podcast box every week with happy callers, talking only good things. We should be a successful club with more premierships. The season's not lost. He just wants to see more aggression and fight for the club. Only AFB and Nicho seem to be doing that. He said the colours and the name mean something. Up. So that's pretty inspo as well from Deegan, a former military person, so he knows about discipline. And yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of that stuff. I mean, I'm with you about the sickness in Vegas and the whole thing. I'm sort of getting away from that whole reason. I think that they should just, like you say, like when the going gets tough, and we were there, Kieran, on the edge of our seats against the Bulldogs. It's like, come on, guys, fight back. And they didn't fight back. And, you know, that happens. But in an ideal world, it doesn't. So appreciate you being in touch. Thanks for listening for so long. Don't be a stranger. Juz says, frustrating loss. Completion rate was good. Wasn't lack for trying. The attack just seemed disjointed. Food for thought. If you're going to carry utility on the bench, would Hiroti be better option? A bit more size, so better suited to the lock position, quick, and can play anywhere in the back line. What are your thoughts on that, Kieran? Is Hiroti? I don't know if he's a benchy.
Mate, I am completely off the Daniel Atkinson on the bench at this point. I just don't see. Again, we've seen him in the centers, we've seen him on the wing. I don't think he can play that role. He can definitely fill in the halves for us. I don't think he can fill in at lock. And if we're going to put someone at hooker, I'm fine with putting Cam at hooker over Brayley. So, you know, I'm not against Hiroti there if we want to cover the back line 1 through 6. I think Hiroti could even play in the 6 jersey.
Do you think we'd still be having the same debate, though? Wouldn't the name just be changed and you'd be go, well, what's Hiroti doing?
I agree with that, right? So my preference at this point is Talakai is that utility on the bench. If Talakai is missing, then, you know, a Billy Burns could do it, and then we could push Teague out. Obviously, the situation on the weekend where Teague was not there and Talakai wasn't there is obviously makes that a little bit more difficult. But yeah, I'm not sold on the utility on the bench because I can't get around playing 2 small lock forwards. You know, maybe when Talakai comes back, we can look at putting Siffer in the 13, or Siffer goes back on, plays that lock role, which he has been doing at the start of the year. But I just think that utility back playing in that 13 jersey is not for us when we have a forward pack that has such size and we're struggling to utilize every one of those middles at the best of their capabilities at this point in time. So maybe we do put a Hiroti on the bench and we just go, all right, you know what, or an Atkinson, and we keep that as that. You know, some teams do it, right? That worst case scenario, put on the last 5-10 minutes if we need to put this player on, but we play with, you know, 16 guys instead with a 3 forward bench, get the minutes into them, because I don't believe in this small back playing at 13.
He also says perhaps a fitter forward in the Jack Williams style, possibly Colquhoun, high impact player that plays less minutes. So he's also into that idea. There's a few other things he's mentioned, which we've covered. So thanks, Juz. Appreciate it. The next one is from a very well-known professional wrestler. His name is CM Punk. He says, quite an unreliable team you have there, Sam. It's time for a real wake-up call. I like the Sharks, but not on performances like that. Looks like the team is going nowhere. They're getting their asses kicked more than me kicking Seth Rollins. Changes need to be made. I'll tune back in when and if they start winning. And so I replied, and I said, we can't have the best in the world not tuning in. Come on, man. And then CM Punk replied, I am the best in the world. The Sharks are the worst at the moment. When they become the best, I'll return. And then I replied, straight edge as per, respect. Now, there's a bit of trolling going on with the Mail and Sam Shinazzi. I'm just going to leave it at that. And I don't mind the trolling because I love professional wrestling and I love hearing from CM Punk. So we're all good. We're all good, Phil. You guys want to play? I'll play. Let's go. Steve says time to get some new players in 26. Oh, we're getting a bit negs here. These ones are a bit negs, which is fine. He's off Fitzy keeping incompetent players. This one's a bit of a weird line from Steve. He says AFB hasn't made a bit of difference because they aren't backing him up. So it's almost like 2 parts of the sentence. I want to split it in 2. You're wrong that he hasn't made a difference, but you're right that they're not backing him up, and we need to do that a bit more. He also says, don't try protecting these guys. They don't deserve it. they let the fans down week in, week out, no excuses. So just on that, for the 100th time, I'm not here to protect anyone. There was a bit of heat during the live stream, Kieran, about me, I don't know, trying to put a spin on things, and I can't say stuff because I'm on Blake Island. It's like I can say whatever I want, whenever I want, and that's what I do. I'm not protecting anyone on this podcast, I don't think. Today, I'm not protecting anyone. I disagree with you, though, saying they're letting us down week in, week out. I think that's a ridiculous statement, but I appreciate you being in touch. Brent says 13 or 12, can't score a try against a tired team. Can't win a game with a minute to go. Mentions a few changes that need to be made. So, yeah, Brent's off the Sharkies. Paul, friend of the show as well, says Kaufusi needs a Newtown stint. He thinks that we rushed to re-sign him. I don't know about Newtown, but do you think they rushed to re-sign him, Kieran?
Well, so Kaufusi was only signed for this season. He was signed, I think, in like October, November. So it was a really late signing for us. Mm-hmm. Now that tells me we obviously wanted to keep him because we've re-upped him since, but we obviously had to make things work with money, dollars and cents. But that decision to re-sign him was not made, I think, in a rush this year. I think that obviously was part of, that deal that we did last year where it was, all right, look, we're going to do this for 25. This is what we have available. But then for 26, 27, etc., we will give you X, Y, and Z. So I think they've got a pretty large sample size on what they believe they can get out of Kaufusi, and they obviously have a really high opinion of him because I think he got another 3 years, I think. So yeah, he's one of the longer ones that are here for a while.
He also says about Atkinson, he's not a fan of him on the bench. So we've covered that. He said, do you think it'd be better to have Hohepa or Colquhoun? And I think both of those guys personally would be a bonus. I can see why Atko's there. I'm not completely against it like a lot of people are, but I think that we can maybe do better in that position. So I think Hohepa in particular will put some pressure on some players. He's a really skillful guy. And Jesse Colquhoun, I mean, the entire world of Sharkland is big on this guy, including the coaching staff. So he'll be there at some point. He just needs to get the match fitness up. He also mentions the Kennedy fourth tackle hit-ups, which we've covered that, Paul. But yeah, we're with you on that one. And he thinks the attitude needs some addressing. Ramian's a great example. He looks uninterested at times. So we'll see what happens against Manly, I think. He does give us his lineup for Manly, and the changes would be, what's he got here? The bench would be Hohepa, Sifa, Hazelton, and Jesse Colquhoun in an ideal world. So, I mean, I don't hate that bench. Peru is very versatile. Sifa maybe takes more of a middle spot. Hazelton, Jesse Colquhoun when fit. So,
yeah, look, I think the real spot for us is that 14 jersey and how we want to use that player, and then how do we then distribute the rest of the minutes out. So, yeah, Peru could be a really good player there because he's more of that traditional 13 that can play that ball playing lock that Atkinson we're trying to develop him into, but he's more of that traditional 13. So it could be worth a shout.
Josh says, frustrating to watch, and the 2 points we should have owned went down the drain. If you read the stats, there's not that much alarming, but we failed the eye test. Did enough in the middle, but didn't capitalize. And talks about the lack of creativity from the halves. In the end, it was an arm wrestle, including a one-man advantage for 10 minutes. We just didn't come out on the other side. Not panic stations, but plenty of work to do. That's from Josh. Thank you so much. And I think this is the last one. It's from Stephen. We've got 28 Stevens writing into us, and I want 29. I want 30. Stephen said, what are your thoughts with Nicho and Trindle? I've been happy to let them sort that out on the night, see who's the more dominant half. This game exposed that when neither stand up, it becomes an uninspired play. It's pretty obvious Trindle is a better kicker than Nicho. I feel the combined halves thing is confusing a very simple game. Give Trindle the 7, Nicho the 6, simplify the roles. You can justify $1 million tag as a 5/8 still. So he's just saying swap the jumpers around. And we've sort of been through that, Stephen. Like, it doesn't really make a difference. I think Stephen and Kieran and everyone, if Fitzy thought it would make a difference in the jumper number, they would just do it and get over and done with. But I legitimately don't think it makes a difference with the number on your back. You could have 112 and still be the fullback, or like it just doesn't matter, man. But it doesn't matter. I know where you're coming from, and I'm not putting shade, and you completely respect your opinion and your thoughts, but I don't think that comes into it. They just need to work it out. And I think you're right, Stephen, about the whole work it out of the night, who's going to be dominant, who's not. I'm not a fan of that. I know that sometimes health and mood and opposition can come into it on the night. I completely understand that things change in the heat of the battle, but I think you do need one of them to be the boss. That's just how I feel about that. Completely appreciate you writing in, Stephen. Thank you so much to everyone who's written in. What an epic bunch of communication. And we have one more bit before I let you go, Kieran. And this is a legitimate postal piece of mail. Now, how am I going to get this undone? Here we go.
Where does it send postal mail to?
Well, we can't reveal personal information.
I know where you live, but is there a PO box?
Well, Kieran, I'm trying to get as professional as I can. There's only so much I can do it, in time in the week. We do have we have a gift from across the world. And for the people listening on a podcast, I'm going to describe it. For people watching, you'll be able to see it. Now, look what I have. It's a black jersey with the name Ben on it. And on the front, it says the morning mashup. This is an official Ben Harlem jersey in my possession. I'm going to wear it proudly. Thank you to Ben, and I won't reveal who delivered it, but someone close to Ben delivered it personally. So thank you very much. It even smells good. It even smells like Ben. How good's that? Part of Ben is here.
Oh, I don't think you want that.
Ben's going to be in the country, and we're going to hang out with Ben lots. So you get to see and hear Ben Harlem. Not in the coming weeks, but certainly down the track he'll be around. So Ben, appreciate it so much, man. Love you so much. Thank you so much. I'm going to wear it with pride. My own Ben Harlem jersey. Kieran, thank you so much for your time. I know you've had a busy couple of weeks, and I appreciate your time. Big game against Manly this week coming up. I haven't got it in the must-win category, but gee, it'd be very nice to win it. And I have no reason to think that we're not going to turn up and put in a really good performance and win. That is not airy-fairy talk. That is the fact that coming off quite a long extended amount of days as per normal, they'll be fresher. It's a fitter team as far as health goes. Teague Wilton's back, Siffer's back, and there's just a bit more stability there. The team has left on Wednesday, and if you're in Perth, there's a few opportunities to catch up with the team, which you can go check out in the official channels. But we're playing to win, Kieran. I think we need to win. It's not must win, but I think we need to win just to stay with the top crew. That's what we want to do. It's what it's all about. So I'm looking forward to it. We're going to try and have a few more pods before then. So stick to our channels, stick to our YouTube, stick to your podcast platforms, and you'll be hearing more from us. But until then, Kieran, appreciate you. Appreciate everyone writing in. Hope it's been a fun episode. I know I've had fun. And we will talk to you all real soon. Up Cronulla.